the winnings of a lonely cowboy. The saloon was restless that night. The air hung heavy with smoke and whiskey, a thick haze that blurred the faces of gamblers hunched over green felt tables. Coins clinked, cards snapped against the wood, and laughter rolled in waves whenever someone's fortune changed. In the corner, a solitary man sat with his hat tilted low, boots dusty from the trail, and eyes sharp as polished steel. Jake Morgan was no stranger to nights like this. He had wandered from town to town, carrying little more than his saddle and his silence. They called him a cowboy, though truthfully he was more drifter than rancher, a man who had once tasted love and lost it, leaving him wary of promises and even warier of people. Yet tonight, he held a steady hand, and luck seemed finally willing to sit beside him. Across the table sat a man of opposite nature, loud, red-faced, and sweating. His name was Dawson, a ranch hand known more for debts than winnings. He grinned too wide, drank too fast, and played as though fortune owed him something. The pile of chips between them had grown, and with every turn of the cards, the room leaned in closer. "You're running hot, cowboy," Dawson muttered, his voice thick with whiskey. "But luck don't last forever. Care to make this more interesting?" Jake didn't answer at first. His fingers tapped the brim of his hat as he studied the man. Then, with a slow nod, he said, "What have you got in mind?" Dawson chuckled and waved a hand toward the shadows near the bar. 3 young women stood there, silent and still, their eyes downcast. Their clothes were travel-worn, their faces marked with fatigue, but beneath it all, dignity lingered. They were sisters, Mylin, the eldest, calm as still water, Xiaolan, the middle, her gaze sharp with defiance, and Lian Hua, the youngest, whose wide eyes revealed both fear and curiosity. "My debt's too steep for coin alone," Dawson slurred, "but I'll wager them. 3 fine prizes. Imported, you might say. Worth more than gold to a man with no one waiting for him." The saloon grew hushed. Even the piano stilled mid-note. Jake's jaw tightened. He despised the way Dawson spoke of them, as if they were cattle to be traded. But the eyes of the sisters lifted, just for a moment, and in their shared glance Jake saw something unexpected, a silent plea. Whether it was for escape or for mercy, he could not yet tell. "Deal the cards," Jake said, his voice low. The game was quick. Dawson, drunk and reckless, overplayed his hand. Jake, steady as the desert sky, laid down his cards one by one. When the final ace hit the table, Dawson cursed, slammed his fist down, and staggered to his feet. The saloon erupted in laughter, but Jake didn't smile. He looked to the sisters, then back at Dawson. "They go with you now," Dawson spat. "I'm a man of my word." Jake rose slowly. He tipped his hat, not to Dawson, but to the women. "Come on," he said simply. The sisters exchanged glances before following him out into the cool night. The desert air felt different beyond the smoke of the saloon. Cleaner, sharper. For the first time in hours, they breathed freely. Jake led them down the quiet street, his boots crunching on the dirt. He could feel their presence behind him, a hesitant rhythm of footsteps. Finally, Mylin spoke, her voice soft but steady. "You did not have to win us," she said. Jake glanced over his shoulder. "Didn't feel right leaving you to him." Xiaolan's tone was sharper. "And what do you intend to do with us now? Another kind of prison?" Jake stopped walking. Under the dim lantern light, his face was unreadable, but his voice carried weight. "I don't intend to keep you as anything. You're free, if that's what you want. But I've got land, and I could use help. You'll be treated fair." The youngest, Lian Hua, tilted her head. "Why would you do that? You don't know us." Jake's eyes softened for the briefest moment. "Maybe because I know what it feels like to be owned by nothing but circumstance." Silence followed, heavy but not hostile. For the sisters, it was the first time in months a man had spoken to them without hunger in his eyes. For Jake, it was the first time in years he had felt the stir of something other than loneliness. From the saloon door, unseen in the darkness, another pair of eyes watched. Clara Evans, her hair pinned neat and her dress finer than any in that dusty town, had been there for the whole game. She had seen Jake win, had seen the way he looked at the women with quiet respect, and something inside her twisted. Once, Jake had belonged to her, if only for stolen nights and whispered promises. But now he walked away, 3 new shadows trailing him. As Jake led the sisters toward his horse, the sound of Clara's voice lingered in his memory, though she had not spoken aloud. "You haven't forgotten me, Jake Morgan." Not yet. The night closed around them. 4 figures moving together into the unknown, bound not by choice but by chance. It was a fragile beginning, but every story had to start somewhere. And this one began with a hand of cards, 3 sisters, and a lonely cowboy who never expected to win more than the silence he carried. Forbidden bonds under the desert sky. The ranch sat on the edge of the desert, where the land stretched wide and lonely. Weathered fences leaned with age, and the house was little more than a cabin framed against the horizon. 4 years Jake had lived here with only his horse and the wind for company, yet now the silence had changed. 3 sets of footsteps echoed across the yard. 3 voices murmured in a language foreign yet melodic. The sisters had entered his world, and with them came a weight Jake had not expected. Mylin moved with quiet grace as she carried a bucket from the well. She did not ask for help, though her hands bore the strain. Jake watched her from the porch, noting the discipline in every movement. She was a woman used to hardship, yet something in her bearing suggested she still held fast to dignity. When she caught him watching, her eyes held his for only a second before lowering. That second, however, carried more than words. Xiaolan, by contrast, made no effort to hide her opinions. She leaned against the corral fence, arms folded, her sharp tongue ready for any remark. "You win us in a game," she said one morning, "and now you let us walk free on your land. Why? What do you expect in return?" Jake chewed on a stalk of dry grass, his hat tilted low against the sun. "I expect honesty. Work, if you're willing. Nothing more." She narrowed her eyes. "Men don't give without taking." Jake's reply was steady. "Maybe you've only known the wrong kind of men." The words lingered, and though Xiaolan said nothing more, the faintest flicker crossed her expression. Distrust mingled with curiosity. Lianhua was different still. She followed Jake with a kind of innocent fascination, trailing him while he fixed the fence or fed the horses. She asked questions no one else dared. "Why do you live alone?" she asked one evening, sitting on the fence as the sky turned red. Jake considered his answer. "Because people leave. Or worse, they stay and break you." The girl tilted her head, not fully understanding, but she held his gaze as if trying to memorize the sadness behind it. That night, as the sisters prepared their bedding in the barn loft, Jake sat outside by the fire. The desert stars stretched endless above, bright against the black sky. He heard the soft steps before he saw her, Mylin, approaching with measured calm. "You should not sit alone," she said, her voice low, carrying both strength and gentleness. Jake gestured toward the fire. Old habit. Hard to shake. She sat across from him, hands folded in her lap. For a long moment they said nothing, listening instead to the crackle of wood and the distant howl of a coyote. Then Mylin spoke again. "You are not like the others. Dawson treated us as objects. You do not." "Why?" Jake stayed into the flames. "Because I know what it feels like to lose yourself. I wouldn't wish that on anyone." Her gaze softened. For the first time since leaving the saloon, a shadow of trust crossed her features. They sat together until the fire burned low, neither needing to fill the silence. But beyond the ranch, in the town's finest house, another silence stirred. Clara Evans sat by her window, looking toward the distant plains. Her husband, Thomas, had returned late from his business dealings, and his heavy footsteps still echoed in the hall. She did not love him, not in the way a wife should. Her heart had never forgotten Jake Morgan, the cowboy who had once stolen her breath in stolen nights. And now she had seen him again, with 3 women at his side. The thought clawed at her. When the moon rose high, Clara saddled her horse and rode. She found Jake by the fence, awake despite the hour. He looked up, startled, as her figure emerged from the shadows. "Clara," he said, his voice cautious. She dismounted, her dress brushing the dust. "You thought you could hide from me?" Jake's jaw tightened. I wasn't hiding. I left because I had to. Her eyes burned with something between longing and accusation. And now you have them. 3 women. Do you think that will keep me away? Jake stepped back, his hand brushing the wood of the fence. They are not mine. Not like that. Clara moved closer, her breath quick. You still want me, Jake. I saw it in your eyes the night you won them. Before he could answer, she pressed her lips to his. For a heartbeat he resisted, but the old fire was there, the memory of nights that never truly died. When he pulled away, his breath was ragged. This is wrong, he said, voice hoarse. Clara's smile was bitter. Wrong never stopped us before. She mounted her horse, leaving him with the taste of betrayal and the weight of temptation. As she rode into the night, Jake stood frozen, the desert wind cold against his skin. Behind him, unseen, Mylin had watched from the shadows. She said nothing, but her heart ached. The bonds that had begun to form now twisted with secrecy. Under the vast desert sky, Jake's lonely world had grown complicated, and every step forward promised to draw him deeper into a web of desire, betrayal, and forbidden love. The web of desire and betrayal. The days stretched longer on Jake's ranch, yet peace did not last. Beneath the surface of routine, feeding horses, mending fences, fetching water, unspoken tensions grew. Where once silence had been comfortable, now every glance carried meaning, and every word seemed heavier than it should. Mylin avoided Jake's eyes in daylight, though at night her thoughts circled him endlessly. She had seen Clara at the fence, had seen the kiss. Her heart, which had begun to open, closed itself again in quiet defense. Still, she could not ignore the way Jake treated her, gentle, protective, as if she mattered in ways no man had shown her before. The conflict burned within, trust or suspicion, desire or restraint. Xiaolan, meanwhile, watched everything. Her fiery nature turned suspicion into provocation. One evening, while Mylin lingered by the fire and Lian Hua hummed softly to herself, Xiaolan approached Jake in the barn. The scent of hay mixed with the musk of horses, the air thick with heat. You play the noble man, she said, leaning against a post, her tone sharp yet edged with something softer. But I know men. They don't save without wanting payment. Jake set down the saddle he was oiling, meeting her gaze. You've got me wrong. She stepped closer, her eyes flickering with challenge. Do I? Her hand brushed his arm, deliberate. For a moment Jake froze, torn between resisting and yielding. The bond seemed to close around them, shadows deepening. But then he pulled back, his voice firm. I won't use you. Not like Dawson would have. Xiaolan's face hardened, yet a glimmer of hurt passed through her eyes. Maybe I wanted you to, she whispered, before turning sharply and leaving him in silence. That night, Jake sat outside, restless. He lit a cigarette, though he seldom smoked, the red tip glowing like a warning in the dark. The wind carried voices from the loft, Mylin whispering, Lian Hua laughing softly. But it wasn't their voices that haunted him. It was Clara's. True to her words, she returned. Slipping through the darkness like a secret, she found him alone again. This time she did not speak first. Instead, she touched his face, and though every instinct told him to push her away, memory betrayed him. He remembered the stolen nights when the world had been reduced to her skin, her breath, her promise. The kiss they shared now was fiercer, desperate, filled with guilt but also undeniable fire. When at last they pulled apart, Clara's eyes were wet. I can't live without you, Jake. My marriage is a prison. You were the only man who ever saw me. Jake clenched his fists. You another man's wife. Her answer cut deep. And yet here you are, kissing me still. He said nothing, because truth burned sharper than denial. Unseen in the distance, Lian Hua had crept from the loft, curious of the night. She stopped short when she saw them, her innocent eyes widening at the sight of Clara's lips against Jake's. She covered her mouth to keep from gasping, then fled silently back to her sisters. By dawn, Mylin sensed something amiss. Lian Hua was quiet, her usual questions gone. Xiaolan eyed Jake with a smirk, as if she knew a secret, and Mylin's heart told her what her mind refused to accept. Jake was torn between them all. Later that day, Mylin confronted him while drawing water from the well. "There is another woman," she said, her voice calm but heavy with sorrow. Jake stiffened. "It's not what you think." Her eyes pierced him. "It is exactly what I think. I have seen how you look at me, how you speak with kindness. But kindness shared with many hearts is not kindness. It is betrayal." He wanted to answer, but words failed. For the first time since he'd met her, Jake felt he had truly disappointed her. As the sun sank, the ranch fell quiet, yet tension hung thicker than smoke in a closed room. Clara's visits could not remain secret forever, and already the threads of deception tightened. In town, Thomas Evans questioned the saloon keeper about Jake Morgan. He had noticed Clara's late rides, her excuses thin as paper. A dangerous suspicion grew in his mind, one that promised violence if proven true. Back at the ranch, Jake lay awake under the stars. Mylin's silence cut deeper than Clara's kiss. He closed his eyes, knowing the truth he could no longer escape. He had stepped into a web of desire and betrayal, and the strands were pulling tighter with every choice he made. The night whispered promises and threats alike. And as dawn approached, Jake sensed the storm that was coming, one that no man could outrun. Love's price in a land of shadows. The desert dawn broke harsh and golden, spilling light across the ranch. Yet inside Jake's chest, the morning felt heavy as iron. He had built a life on solitude, but now he stood in the center of a storm of his own making. 3 sisters looked to him with hope, suspicion, or longing. Clara came to him with passion wrapped in chains of marriage. And somewhere in town, Thomas Evans waited with the sharp instincts of a man who could smell betrayal before it was spoken. By mid-morning, the storm arrived. Jake was fixing the corral gate when he heard the crunch of wagon wheels on dry soil. Dust swirled as Thomas Evans rode into the yard. Tall in the saddle, his face set like stone. Clara sat beside him, silent but pale, her eyes flicking to Jake with a plea she could not voice aloud. The sisters emerged from the barn, their hands stilled in their chores, their gazes sharp with unease. Mylin stood nearest, her posture straight though her heart pounded. Xiaolan's lips curled, sensing trouble like a hawk circling its prey. Lian Hua clutched her eldest sister's arm, whispering a frightened prayer. "Jake Morgan," Thomas said, his voice carrying authority sharpened by suspicion. "I hear talk in town. About late rides. About my wife's wandering eyes. Tell me now, what truth should I believe?" Jake's jaw tightened. He felt every eye on him, waiting, weighing. For a moment he considered denial, but lies only worsened wounds. He met Thomas's stare. "The truth is, she came here. More than once. I should have sent her away. That's on me." Clara's lips parted, her breath caught, but Thomas didn't look at her. His gaze burned into Jake alone. "So it's true, then. My wife in another man's arms." His hand drifted toward the pistol at his side. The air grew razor-thin. The sisters held still, as if even breath might trigger the violence hanging in balance. Mylin stepped forward suddenly, her voice clear as desert wind. "Enough," she said, standing between Jake and Thomas. "This man saved us when no one else would. He is flawed, yes, but his heart is not as black as you believe. If you must punish someone, punish me, for it is I who love him." Jake's chest tightened. Her confession struck deeper than bullets. Clara flinched as if struck herself, realizing what she had lost. Thomas's gaze shifted, surprise flickering through his iron composure. He studied Mylin, then looked back to Jake. For a long breath, the tension coiled tighter, and then, slowly, he lowered his hand from the pistol. "I will not kill you," Thomas said finally. His voice was steady, but his pride was bleeding. "Not here, not now, but hear me. Cowboy, my wife stays in my house, and if I see her near you again, you won't live to see another sunrise." Without waiting for reply, he snapped the reins. The wagon lurched, carrying Clara away. She looked back only once, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, half anger, half regret. When the dust settled, silence reigned. Jake turned to Mylin, words caught in his throat. She had exposed her heart before all, unafraid. Xiaolan's sharp expression softened, though bitterness lingered. Lian Hua exhaled, relief trembling through her small frame. Jake stepped closer to My Lin. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, voice rough. Her reply was calm but unyielding. "If I had not spoken, you would already be dead. Sometimes love is worth the risk of truth." For a long moment they stood in the open yard, the desert wind tugging at their clothes, the world reduced to the fragile connection between them. As night fell, Jake saddled his horse. My Lin approached, her hand brushing his arm. "Where will we go?" she asked softly. He looked out over the endless horizon, the land stretching wide with both promise and peril. "Anywhere that isn't hay. We can't stay. Not after this." The sisters gathered what little they owned. Under the starlight, they rode with Jake into the desert, shadows trailing long behind them. Clara's memory lingered like a scar, the taste of infidelity not yet gone. Yet beside him rode My Lin, steadfast, her confession binding them in a new kind of promise. The cowboy had won them in a hand of cards, but what he carried away now was not victory. It was love born of chance, tested by betrayal, and scarred by desire's price. And as the night swallowed their figures, the story did not end, but turned another page, one where freedom and love waited just beyond the next horizon.